A jury is currently deliberating in the Rittenhouse trial after the prosecution and defense gave their closing arguments. This after an 18-year-old traveled across state lines following the shooting of Jacob Blake in Kenosha, Washington, or Kenosha, Wisconsin, rather. And what we saw from Rittenhouse as he landed in Wisconsin, he ended up partnering up with some business owners trying to protect their businesses and as a result shot two people who are out protesting and injured another. I want you guys to take a listen to the latest coverage from the trial.
National Guard on alert as Kenosha, Wisconsin braces for a verdict in the homicide trial of Kyle Rittenhouse. Rittenhouse faced 6 charges for his actions on the night of August 25, 2020, when he was armed with an AR-15 rifle, including 3 homicide-related charges: first-degree reckless homicide, first-degree intentional homicide, and first-degree attempted intentional homicide. Rittenhouse has pleaded not guilty to all counts. But on Monday, ahead of closing arguments,
the court is confined on that kind of a motion to what's in the complaint and whether it meets the law. I think it ought to have been mighty clear that I had big problems with this statute. I've made no bones about that from the beginning. Is the firearm here now? If the barrel length is less than 16 inches or an overall length less than 26 inches, then I'll deny the motion. If it does not meet those specifications, then this defense motion will be granted.
It is not a short-barreled shotgun or a short-barreled rifle, yes.
Either by barrel or by overall length?
Correct.
All right, and then count 6 is dismissed.
The judge dismissed one of the charges for illegal gun possession, informing the jury.
So that will not be something that you will need to address. You'll need to address only the first 5 counts.
The judge is also permitting the jury to consider lesser offenses for 2 of the felony charges, if the members aren't unanimous on the more serious corresponding charge.
Ben, I want to unpack this a little bit. I know that we are going to listen to the closing arguments from both sides, some of the highlights there, but that's a lot to unpack, knowing that the judge dismissed the gun charges and then is giving the jurors the opportunity to convict on 2 lesser charges if they're not unanimous in the conviction on the higher felony level charges.
Right. Good morning, Georgia. Yeah, this is it can't get any clearer that this is the red carpet being rolled out for white supremacy for this poster boy, this poster child. Kyle Rittenhouse has become the poster child for all that is this resurgence, this renaissance of white supremacy that we're living through. That said, this judge has made it clear that he is going to do everything within his power to make sure that not only does Kyle get a fair hearing, but that he gets an above fair hearing. I mean, I've never seen images like I've seen of a defendant, a murder defendant, so casual with the judge in my life. And I think it's just a display of how much they have rolled out the red carpet for white supremacy here.
And for those of you who have not been following along in this trial, let's go ahead and take a listen to the prosecution's closing arguments.
At this point, the crowd is dealing with what they perceive to be an active shooter. The crowd sees the defendant running with a gun. He's lying to them. He still has the gun. He's shot someone. This is provocation to them. This is someone who has committed a criminal act and is putting people in danger. It is entirely reasonable for that crowd to believe at that moment that he is a threat to kill again. The defendant could have made it unequivocally clear what he was doing. He could have stayed at Mr. Rosenbaum's body, helped protect him, helped preserve his life, call 911. He could have dropped the gun. He could have raised his hands and surrendered. He could have signaled to this crowd that he did not pose a threat anymore. But everything he does is indicative of someone who is still a threat. And I got to stop here for a moment and highlight the hypocrisy of the defense. Because according to the defense, if someone has a gun, they're a threat. If someone points a gun, they're a threat. There's only one exception to that. The defendant. By their logic, he gets to run around with a gun all night. But, oh, we're not supposed to take him as a threat. He gets to point the gun at everyone. But oh, we're not supposed to take him as a threat. No, it doesn't work that way. The same set of rules apply to the defendant as everybody else. There's no exception in the law for Kyle Rittenhouse. There's no exception that says, if anyone else has a gun, you're a danger, except for Kyle Rittenhouse. There's no exception in the law that says, if you point your gun at people, oh, that makes you a threat and I can kill you, except for Kyle Rittenhouse. I can do it all night long.
As Mr. Binger said, he brought a gun to a fist fight. And he was too cowardly to use his own fist to fight his way out. He has to start shooting.
So how do we evaluate the defendant's performance as a medic that night? Well, on one hand, he wrapped up an ankle and I think maybe helped somebody who got a cut on their hand. Yay. On the other hand, he killed 2 people, blew off Gage Gross-Kurtz's arm, and put 2 more lives in jeopardy. So, you know, when we balance your role as a medic that night, I don't give you any credit.
You know, Ben, when you hear the prosecution there, I think that it was pretty bold of them to point out the defense being hypocrites, but they made their point. And I think that is the type of boldness is going to take if they're going to sway jurors to find him guilty. It's going to take the jurors to see the hypocrisy in the defense's arguments in this case.
That's right. And, you know, people are, we oftentimes dismiss conservatives as, you know, not smart or maybe not the brightest, you know, bulbs in the bunch, but they are able to demonstrate a level of cognitive dissonance, or rather some mental gymnastics that's brilliant here, because in this instance, they are going to clearly see the hypocrisy, but they are going to make an exception. It's special pleading. We see it all the time. They are going to make, and I don't want to make this conclusion on behalf of the jury. We'll see what the jury says, but all around the country, people are making this argument that yes, this is the hypocrisy that they believe should be true, that they should have the right to kill us and that we should have no ability to view them as a threat and to defend ourselves.
And quick, before we move on here, I want you guys to take a listen to the highlights from the defense's arguments.
We don't play fast and loose with the facts, pretending that Mr. Rosenbaum was Citizen A #1 guy. He was a bad man. He was there. He was causing trouble. He was a rioter. And my client had to deal with him that night alone. They want it to be that Kyle was out there doing something improper. Kyle was a 17-year-old kid out there trying to help this community. He was asked to provide help in protecting property at the car sources. It started and he did it. Ladies and gentlemen, other people in this community have shot somebody 7 times and it's been found to be okay. And my client did it 4 times in 3/4 of a second to protect his life from Mr. Rosenbaum. Kyle shot Joseph Rosenbaum to stop a threat to his person. And I'm glad he shot him, because if Joseph Rosenbaum had got that gun, I don't for a minute believe he wouldn't have used it against somebody else. He was irrational and crazy. One with his hands, one with his feet, one with a gun. Hands and feet can cause great bodily harm. I'm sure the state's going to get up and say, well, he didn't have great bodily harm, so it doesn't matter. That's not the standard.
So, you know, there you're seeing what the defense laid out in defense of Kyle Rittenhouse. And ultimately, if the jury believes that Rittenhouse was acting in self-defense, he is going to get off if they believe that. But it's interesting because throughout the trial, we continuously heard this point that how is he acting in self-defense when he himself is actually the threat?
That's right. That's right. Well, no, and that's the thing. It's the absurdity of white supremacy. These white men believe that they have the ability to infiltrate in any area that they go into. They have to be respected as the authority there, because that's the only lens through which this defense argument makes any sense. The only way Kyle Rittenhouse can get away with this is if he himself was deputized as an authority to go there and to create the situation that he created, because he was deputized, but he wasn't, Georgia. And this is why this precedent in this case is so dangerous, because there's so many other aspiring Kyle Rittenhouses out there who want to follow in his suit. And if they see that he can get away with it, I fear we're going to have a resurgence of these white supremacists, wannabe vigilantes who are trying to be the next Kyle Rittenhouse.
Yeah, very dangerous there. Well, we will continue following this. The jury is going to continue deliberating today, and we're expecting that verdict to come down at any time. There was a lot of criticism over the internet after people saw what happened inside of the courtroom as the jury moved to deliberate on the Rittenhouse trial. There is a clip we'll show you here in just a moment where you can see Rittenhouse drawing out numbers, basically selecting the jurors who are going to deliberate on his verdict. Take a look at this.
Let's take strike the jurors as necessary. All of the jurors' numbers have been exhibited to the defendant, I believe. Yes, and they're paper clipped together now. And then please put them in the tumbler, and the bailiff will rotate it, and then the defendant will draw out 6 of the numbers. Do you want to leave them as is, Judge? Or no, just separate them and. Parting, as they say, is such sweet sorrow. You've been wonderful jurors, and we couldn't have asked for a higher quality jury, better jurors, more attentive jurors, more prompt jurors. And
now I've covered a lot of trials, and never have I seen a defendant able to draw numbers deciding the jurors in which will decide their own fate. Ben, we continuously through the Rittenhouse trial, we've seen some very bizarre legal decisions made by the judge, including the language that could be used. I think that was one of the first red flags that we noticed in this trial. The judge not allowing prosecution to refer to the 2 deceased as victims, but only allowing them to be referred to as rioters or protesters. And now in this latest development, I mean, it feels like Rittenhouse in some cases is being coddled.
That's right. It's almost absurd, Georgia, to see the red carpet being rolled out for this defendant. And here's the thing. I've heard several attorneys argue that the manner in which the judge is behaving now is the manner in which judges should behave in general. This is such a stark contrast to what we are accustomed to, particularly in the Black community, because I've not seen a Black person with a speeding ticket get treated as nicely as Kyle Rittenhouse.
Yeah. And then now in his case, I mean, he is accused of murdering 2 people and injuring another. The judge even dismissed one of the charges, the lower level charges, right, which he would likely be convicted on, and that's so right. It is, when you also juxtapose this to the trial that's happening in Burnswick for the 3 men who are accused of killing Ahmaud Arbery, while there's parallels, there's also differences. But right, what I'm seeing turn out to be the same is a system that gives these men the confidence that they can go out in the world and kill people and get away with right. it.
For this particular judge in the Rittenhouse case, we can see there's favoritism we can see there's some kind of issue that he has. Racism, straight up racism. We can see that there's an issue that he has with Black people. I know that we're going to go a little bit out of order here, but I want to take it to the Rittenhouse. I want to take it to the Rittenhouse video of the judge talking about Blacks being in the courtroom.
I'm now reading about how bizarre and unusual it was to have the defendant pick the numbers out of the tumbler yesterday. And I would admit that I don't know that there's a large number of courts that do that, maybe not any. I do it because of an incident that I had in a case I tried in Racine. Oh, I'm going to say I estimated 20 years ago it could have been less than that, it could have been more. But it was a big case. I think it was a murder case, but I'm not sure. And there was a Black defendant, and there were 13 jurors, one of whom was Black. And when the clerk, the government official, drew the name out of the tumbler, it was a Black, the only Black. There was nothing wrong with it. It was all okay. But what do they talk about? Optics nowadays? Is that the word for things? That was a bad optic, I thought. I think people feel better when they have control. So ever since that case, I have, ever since that case, I've had an almost universal policy of having the defendant do the picks. It had nothing to do with anybody's race or anything like that.
When it was at that moment, he knew he effed up.
Yeah. Yes. It's exactly.
It was a Black.
Yes. The Black, the only Black. Okay.
Black and
so listen, no. This is the Black. When we say we say a Black, the only Black, it's a Black person. So
you might as well be using the N-word.
And it's funny. When we hear that from a white person, we know what they're talking about. Now, when we say it might be a Black mile, might be Black, you know what I'm saying? But anywho, it could be a lot of things. But I'm going to get to the judge in a second, but I want you to see, as the judge is speaking here, how Kyle is seemingly making himself look very meek, very young, and very, like, oh my God, look at him. He's looking like a sad little baby, as his father is speaking in defense of him. And they were talking about the judge, and we're talking about Kyle Rittenhouse, the murderer. And as we watch this, and it's funny because in another clip, when he's saying this, after he finishes his statement about the Black, the only Black, he starts almost patronizing this whole situation. He makes it a joke and says, after he said that, now can I start a song? And he starts talking about the autumn leaves. It was, I don't know what the autumn leaves song was about, but the white defendants, the white, Kyle, them, they all start smiling. What the hell y'all smiling about? What are you smiling about? The person you're defending murdered people. What is funny in this case right now? Thinking about that, looking at that, hearing that, it just gave me when they lynched Black people and they would have parties around it. They would eat.
Rebecca,
yes.
What was Billie Holiday's song?
Strange fruit. Yeah.
Hanging from the poppy tree, right?
Yeah.
Autumn leaves.
Yes.
Red, blood on the leaves.
Wow.
Kill it, y'all. When you just said that, I just shut down. Like, what?
You better preach, DJ Exclusive. You better preach, boy.
It gave exactly that. And I couldn't put my finger. I'm like, why is it giving me like, what the hell? Like, it's giving me a bad, eerie feeling as this man is singing that. And he probably sat there, the way that he finished talking about Blacks, the way that he finished discussing that statement, and then goes into wanting to sing about autumn leaves. Very, very strange. I don't care what nobody say. This judge has a history of racism in his blood. He's probably seen some things, done some things. The way that he refers to Black people as a Black, the Black, the way that he talks about, just throwing, numbers out there. And, we had one black in the room. It's kind of like that does not, this case right here is so serious. We already see favoritism in the courtroom. And now we're seeing this man. Kyle is a man. I know that they want to still give us, paint him as we're watching him. Look at how meek he looks. They want to do his hair like a little Disney kid. No, this is a man, a young man who killed people and should go to jail for it. Why are we sitting in this courtroom with him every day trying to make sense of what he did when there are two people who can't speak for themselves in this particular moment? There is a judge who is constantly, not only with him, with the people around him, who is constantly using his power to belittle Black people and make them as small as possible in this whole case, but say, at least we had one Black person in the room. I've done this before. Now, in this next clip, we're going to hear the judge actually speak on the media's criticism.
Business about people not being identified as victims. How would you like to be put on trial for a crime? And the judge introduced the case to the jury by introducing you as the defendant and the person who is accusing you as the victim. And then throughout the trial, have all the references to the complaining witness as being the victim. Is it so difficult to just use the term complaining witness instead of prejudging what the jury is here to determine as to whether there's a victim and whether there was a crime committed?
The jury is there to to say whether there was a victim, whether there was a crime committed. We know that's how it goes, right? But there were victims. There was a crime committed. I don't know why these statements are coming out of the judge's mouth. We need honesty in these seats. We need, we need people who see color in these seats. Because these type of people, he's trying to make his case as if he doesn't see color. He's trying to make it seem as if, the word victim is such an issue, but we need to be honest. Watching this case, being people watching this case, I know the family is hurting. The family of those who were murdered are in pain. There were victims in this case, and the victim is not Kyle. It is not Kyle. It is not Kyle. And this is the same thing that we see in Arbery's case. And with the Arbery case, we're calling it the Arbery case. And I think we're doing that because we want to make sure that people understand that, he's not on trial, but It's almost as if they are putting him on trial. But I want people to remember his name, because these two men, the murderers, are going to be painted as Kyle Rittenhouse. No matter how we flip it, you guys, it's these white people, when they are being tried, they get this treatment of, I'm going to do the best I can to get you off. And if I can't get you off, the least amount of time that you can get. If a Black person were in these positions right now, how would this look? Was in the position of Kyle Rittenhouse, how would this look? This wouldn't even go on for this long. There would not be a fight. That man, because could have been 15, would be considered a grown man, would be given maybe 25 to life. And, we would never see, the victim would be the person that Black man killed. Period. Period.
Somebody said something in the chat that just said it. Black person wouldn't have even made it to a trial.
Never.
They would have still been waiting, because they moved quick as hell on this one. I want y'all to pay attention to that.
Yeah. And this is very disturbing to see this happening in both cases right before our eyes. In the Arbery's case, or in the case of the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, it pains me that the representation is so upset, so upset that Black pastors are in the room. Are you like they don't want Black people in the room. We can see that in this case with the jurors. And the fact that they gave just, hey, we're just in the, predominantly possibly white situation. We're going to just throw numbers out there. We're going to just throw numbers out there. And if they're white or Black, we're not being racist. We're just going to give you that opportunity to make sure you have the best jury possible. When they see your young, meek face and they see that you're white like them, there will be a possibility of justice for you in what you did. You were just having a bad day.
Super quick. So James, I think with that comment that person left, what they might have been talking about, and I don't know for sure, but what they might have been referring to is they probably would have had court out on that street that very night. It didn't make it to, it wouldn't have made it to trial because they would have tried jury executioned, especially with the kind of gun that he was walking around with.
Absolutely.
I mean, come on, like that's an open and closed case to them, So
yeah, those are big facts, and still to this day, it irks my soul to see the police just drive by this little boy as he's walking there with this assault rifle on his chest. They just drive right by like he's supposed to be out there.
Yeah,
it irks my soul every time I see it.
Yeah, you're talking about the footage, the original footage of Kyle walking and moving, literally walking through the protest, and they're just not giving a damn. Now, the police are supposed to be there to protect and serve, but they only do that with conditions. Let's put an asterisk right there, protect and serve. And it's only going to be those who are looking like them, mostly white, protect and serve those in those community, because in a protest, all Black people are the issue. Black people are looters. Black people are dangerous. That Black people are thugs. Black people are out there to start division and to start arguments. They're not there to be fighting for their rights. That's what authorities see automatically, and that's to me what this judge is hearing. This white little boy felt like he needed to go and save the world from Black people asking for justice. Go ahead, David.
I just wanted to get in because I know I'm figuring we're gonna move on. And I just wanted to say that it's important to highlight too that he's ignoring his own double standard. He's responding to the media's criticism, or just criticism in general, around his decision around the word victim, while he also was willing to allow the victims to be labeled arsonists, looters, and rioters. Mm-hmm. So as long with the caveat, as long as they can be proved to be that. So you can easily prove that they were victims. They literally, by definition, fell victim to Kyle Rittenhouse's gun.
Yes, they died. They were murdered,
and the victims are not on trial here,
and they can't speak for themselves. So the judge just saying who can be victim and who can't be is very strange to me, because like you said, David, which is a great point, by definition, there are victims in this case. But we're going to leave it to some random ass people who are mostly white. And we're going to leave it up to them as they continue to create the narrative for Kyle Rittenhouse. Guys, this is our justice system. And for Black people, the fact that when we heard the judge or the defendants in the Arbery case or the Arbery murder case say Black pastors can't be in the room, and then the judge over here say, there was a Black. I once did it before, and there was a Black, the only Black, and start to sing about autumn leaves. You guys have to know why that shakes up our spirits. We are not free. We, being Black people, are not free. And when there is a system that we stand before that wants to make sure we are not free, they will make sure we are not free and remind us of our history, of us not being able to even walk outside, be people